So, welcome to Monday Night Live. I'm Ken Edmonds, and as you can see, I was in Jamaica recently. But for tonight's show, we're going to talk about the announcements made by most of the cruise lines today. Well, I won't say today. It started Friday and it ended today, where pretty much all of the cruise lines have canceled their sailings for April. And now they're saying that they're going to resume sailings somewhere between early May and the end of May. There's only one real exception to that, and that's Virgin Cruise Lines has said that they expect their inaugural voyage to be August 1st. But the rest of the major cruise lines are talking like we're going to start sailing in about a month, or let's say 6 weeks. And so the question I have, first of all, for you, is that what you think? I've gotten a lot of comments on Facebook. I was fairly active after I posted this, responding to the comments. So, and if you want to comment, just type something in, hit it, and I'll try to keep a watch over here on the side and pop your comments up to the screen. But my first question is, and you can just go ahead and respond to this one, is do you think we'll start sailing, or cruises will start sailing in May or the end of May? And while you guys are putting your comments in, I'm going to say this: I think not. I did a show about this maybe 3 weeks back when they were talking about sailing in April, and I said, no, not going to happen in April. I'm going to make this statement that I think it's an absolute fact that they will not be sailing in the month of May. I think June is very questionable. So and I don't think the cruise lines have any question about this. I don't think there's any doubt in their mind that there's no way we're going to sail in May. So the question comes up is, why do they keep just piecemealing the process? And I am very much a realist, and I'm quite a bit of a cynic as well. So I'm going to share my thoughts. And I would be interested in your comments on this as well. But the big reason that the cruise lines are canceling 1 month at a time is to protect their cash flow. I did some research for another video I'm going to do, but it was talking about the cash burn rates of the major cruise lines. And so, for example, on Carnival, they have enough cash after they borrowed $3 billion to continue operations for about 6 months. Most of the other lines are less than that. Royal Caribbean has already had to stop a couple of refurbs. They were going to upgrade a couple of ships. They've pulled the plug on that process. They're not going to be able to do that. So what you think about what happens if everybody that has a cruise booked between now and let's say the end of July, because I'm hoping that by the end of July, assuming that, and this is making some pretty big assumptions, but assuming that the situation gets better with the coronavirus, with COVID-19, assuming we get that under control, and assuming that we have some way of making sure that we don't have problems with it. I got a couple comments here, so let me just pop up one. Danny, yep, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I would say. Yeah, they didn't get any money from the government. That is true as well. But to back up a little bit here, if you think about a given cruise ship has, I'll say the average cruise ship now is around 3,000 passengers. And let's say that the average cruise fare is, just to make my math simple, I'm going to say $1,000. That's $3 million worth of cash that they have received to help them, to pay for that cruise. Now, if they cancel the cruise, one of the options they have to give everybody is to give them their money back. Whereas if the cruise lines can hold on to the cash and get you to book a future cruise, and basically transfer that money to a future cruise, what's happened is they've saved that $3 million in cash. Now that was for 1 week on one ship. And so that number starts to be a huge number. Carnival is about maybe 25 ships. So that's $75 million a week in potential lost revenue. Or no, not lost revenue, because they're losing the revenue anyway. But it is $75 million of cash that's flowed out of their ability to sustain themselves as we move on down the road. And I would say that if I was in their situation, I might try that same approach as well, because they're fighting for their survival. As it was mentioned by Danny, and I'll pop up another one here. Yeah, that's what Canada has said about Alaska. We'll talk about Alaska in a minute. I want to come back to that. But so for the cruise lines, they are going to, and I think we will see them continue to do these rolling cancellations. Now, in my case, I had one booked for April 13th, and I sat on it until Carnival canceled it so I could get my money back. It was for my granddaughter's spring break, and she couldn't go right now. If we could cruise, she couldn't go, so I wasn't going to go. But I didn't want to kick the can with my money down the road 6 months or so, hoping that there would be a cruise. So I just thought that was silly. So I wanted my money back, and I'd prepaid some things that I wanted back as well. But what I see, and some of them are really cynical about it, because yesterday morning I tried a mock booking on Norwegian Cruise Line, and I'm a huge NCL fan. I love NCL. I've been on my last 10 cruises. Well, 10 of my last 11 cruises were on them. This cruise to Jamaica, I went on MSC, and we had a great time, and that'll be a thing for another video. But, on Monday, I could book an April cruise to Bermuda. And on Tuesday, they canceled. So they went to sleep and got up the next morning and decided they were going to cancel? I don't think so. I think, again, it goes back to this, let's say cynicism, or it's my cynicism, but it's just a matter of trying to manage their cash flow. And so the more they can get you to book future cruises and transfer existing cruises down the road, the better off they are. It's interesting. I'll talk about Carnival, and I'm not picking on Carnival, because they all have a variety of different programs and different ways of doing it. But Carnival is giving you onboard credit, not extra cruise discounts or extra cruise money. Why are they doing that? Because, again, that has zero impact on that cruise ship when they finally fill it up and they can sail. So they'll have gotten close to full revenue for all the passengers. And that $600 you spend on board, or $300, depending on the time frame, that you spend on board is just gravy money that they won't get, but they're hoping that you'll spend that and some more anyway. And I'm going to actually do a video that talks about the economics of a cruise ship. I've been doing some research, and that's part of where I found the burn rate information. But there's several challenges. I'm going to outlay these challenges. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not missing any comments. So if I look over here for a second, excuse me. There's some real issues that have to be resolved before we're going to be able to start cruising. One of the things, and we'll start with this, is right now Holland America has got passengers that are sick with COVID-19 on a ship that they don't know where it's going to be able to go. They were planning on going to Fort Lauderdale, and the governor of Florida has said no. Broward County, which is where Fort Lauderdale is supposed to be meeting this evening, but there's a very good chance they're going to say no to letting them offload passengers. Now, everybody was talking about southern Florida, so it's possible it may be Orlando, or maybe Jacksonville would open up. Mobile is a close port to, it's along their cruise line. It's along the path they're cruising. I can't tell you for sure where it's going to wind up, but when you've got that kind of situation still ongoing, there's no way that people are going to go get on a cruise ship. And so in addition to the passengers being ready, and we've got to be, I think most of us have got to be convinced that we can get on a ship and do so safely. And it's not, I cruised on May 2nd. We left on a 7-day cruise out of Miami. And when I got back, I was actually more worried because I went to Disney, went to Epcot, and they were cleaning everything constantly. But on the cruise ship, everybody got checked before they got on. Nobody checked my temperature when I went into Epcot. So again, those are some of the things that are going to have to get resolved. So now let's go to the comment about Alaska. What's got to happen is, first of all, Alaska's got to open up, and Alaska's dealing with problems with the coronavirus. So that's got to get resolved. Canada's got to open up, and Seattle said they've basically put the cruise season on hold. So if you can't get on the ship and leave the port you want to leave from, you can't transit Canada, and you can't get into ports in Alaska, it doesn't sound like there's much hope in the short term for the Alaskan cruise season. And now I have a September 4th sailing on Norwegian NCL to Alaska that I'm hoping goes. I wouldn't bet big money on it. I've just got it deposited. I'm not in any hurry to go put my final payment down on that cruise until we see some things change in the environment. A lot of the cruise ports, the places, if you could get on a ship today and sail and do so safely, where could you go? There are not very many ports that are open, and not very many countries willing to let cruise ships stop there. In the Southern Hemisphere, Australia and New Zealand, there's some ships down there that they're trying to figure out what to do with the passengers stuck on board. The Norwegian Jewel pulled a really slick trick and got their passengers off. But they had been in a South Pacific cruise, and they couldn't get off anywhere in the South Pacific, so they went to Hawaii to get gas. And magically, the day they got to port, they developed a mechanical problem that required all the passengers to get off the ship. Now, the cynic in me says that's pretty convenient. It could be just the cynic in me. Maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe it was really an issue. But what we see is those issues have got to be resolved. And the destinations, not only do they have to be resolved, but they also have to be in a situation where that it's safe to go there and safe to visit. I did some analysis on the cruise ships, and break-even point for a typical cruise. Like I said, I've got another video I'm going to do on all of this, but the break-even point is about 70% full for that sailing to be break-even. Actually, it's just a little over 70, between 70 and 75. So think about it this way. And we'll pick on Carnival at about 25 ships, and that's close. I don't remember exactly, I'm sorry to say. But that means that they need to have 75,000 passengers that can get to the port, that want to get on a ship, and feel safe enough to do it, to spend the money. And then you multiply that's every week. That's almost 300, well, it's about 300,000 passengers a month that have to be willing to get on a cruise ship to go and travel. Any less than that, and that's just to get to, a little bit above break even. So it becomes very serious and very difficult for the cruise lines. They desperately need help. They desperately need things to work so that they can get back to sea. But the challenge exists that I think, my personal opinion is that there's no chance we will see anybody sail in May. Nobody's going to sail. June, I don't think anybody's going to sail. I really don't. I think that July or August is probably the earliest. And that's if everything comes together perfectly. And if it doesn't, it could be September or October before we start to see cruises, get back to normal. One telling sign is that we're starting to find the cruise lines sending their crews home. For a while, they were keeping the crews on the ship, but now a lot of the cruise lines are starting to get all the non-essential people off the ship and send them back home. I was in a chat with somebody the other day whose daughter works on a cruise line, and they had just sent her home way before her contract ended. They were shipping out another 250 people the next day. They're starting to send their employees home. Well, once their employees get home, then they've got to make sure that they have a clean bill of health to bring them back. And then they've got to get them gathered up and get them back and get on the ship and get everything provisioned and ready to sail. So it is going to be quite a while, in my opinion. And these are just my opinions. And I see a question here. Let me pop this one up. So Alex asked about Western Mediterranean mid-September with NCL. I think there's a possibility. A lot of it depends on, you think about what's going on in Spain and in Italy and all of those countries. So that's got to get cleared up. Like I said, the U.S.'s health has got to get stabilized. Somebody earlier made a comment, it might have been in one of the forums I was in, that, really we need to have a vaccine, and we really have to have some way that they could test you at the port before you get on for COVID-19. The other thing that we need to think about, and this is kind of a scary thought going forward, is what about the next virus? I think that we're going to see cruising change in some ways, because a lot of the people that are still stuck on ships were people that were on extended cruises, on the Princess ship that was having trouble in around Australia, New Zealand, that area. I want to say they were on a 117-day world cruise. And so what happens then to those kinds of cruises? And I don't have an answer to it, but I think that people are going to be much less likely to get on ships for extended periods of time. And again, I would love to see some comments and your thoughts on it. Hopefully you should be able to post right into my chat. I'm not seeing anybody other than the ones who have popped up on the screen. But what I would say is that if you're where you can live without your cash, the cruise lines will really appreciate it, and you get a pretty good return on investment. On a 6-day cruise right now, Carnival's giving, a 6 or more day cruise, Carnival's giving you $600 in onboard spend. That would cover all of my onboard expenses. So that's a really generous offer. And if you have a $1,500 cruise and you get $600 in onboard spend, that's a pretty good return on investment. You're not going to get that from the bank. So I think from that perspective, they're not trying to hurt their passengers, but they are very much trying to protect their cash flow. And again, any sane businessman right now is worried about their cash flow. I teach service management in an industry. And one of the things that we've been talking about in the service management class is what are the things that they can do to protect cash flow to get them through this process. They also can't afford to pay people that are not generating any revenue, and their customers aren't generating any revenue. So it becomes a real challenge for every industry. I think the one other thing that I'll mention that I hadn't brought up yet is what's going to happen to the world economy. I've seen predictions that say we're going to see somewhere between 15 and 35% unemployment. If we see those kinds of numbers, the amount of people that will have money to travel is going to diminish severely. I think one of the things that we will see is the housing market is going to collapse. I was thinking about selling my house. So I talked to a realtor about a week ago. And one of the things he told me, he said, Ken, in 2008, which is the closest thing we have in recent history, houses lost 20% of their value month over month for 3 months. So a house that was worth $200,000 lost $40,000, and then a little bit less than 40,000, and then about 15,000. So they lost about probably $80,000. No, actually more than that, because they lost 60%. So that would be they lost $120,000 worth of value in their house. And we saw, for most of you that were here in the U.S., and I don't know what it was like in other places, but you could buy houses very cheap at that point in time. I decided not to take mine off the market because of that. So the psychology of the potential recession or depression or whatever happens, and the risk factors associated with cruising, all of these things are going to play into when we actually start sailing. I appreciate all of you being here. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to try not to drag this out too long. This will be live, and for those of you who are watching on the replay, please feel free to post comments. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I beg, please do so. But go ahead and post comments if you're watching on the replay, because I'll answer all the comments that get posted and share my perspective. Again, thanks very much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next Monday night.